Donald Trump isn't holding back anymore. Just days after the shocking assassination of Charlie Kirk shook the conservative movement to its core, Trump went on Fox and declared exactly what millions of Americans have been thinking. This isn't random. This isn't chaos. This is war. A war being waged by the radical left, bankrolled by globalist kingpins like George Soros, who treat America's freedom as their personal playground. Trump made it crystal clear. He's not just running to win elections. He's running to dismantle the machine that funds the chaos, manipulates the press, and turns criminals loose while ordinary Americans suffer. Think about it. While patriots mourn Kirk, Trump stepped forward with leadership, awarding the Medal of Freedom posthumously, standing beside Vice President J.D. Vance as thousands gathered at the memorial. That moment wasn't just about honoring Kirk. It was about sending a signal. The days of silence in the face of radical leftist violence are over. Trump is done playing defense. He's drawing the line. And who sits right at the center of this network of destruction? George Soros, the billionaire whose open society foundations pour billions into progressive DAs who refuse to prosecute crime. The same Soros network that quietly bankrolls activist groups behind riots, media influence operations, and election meddling. Trump said it flat out on August 27. Soros and his son Alex should face RICO charges for financing lunatics ripping apart America. So here's the question. Why hasn't this man been held accountable? How much more evidence do we need before Washington admits this isn't philanthropy, it's sabotage? And what exactly did we learn this summer that makes Soros's fingerprints on America's crises undeniable? The cracks in Soros's empire are showing, and Republicans are the ones pulling back the curtain. On July 31st, the Durham Annex dropped a bombshell, documents linking Soros's money straight into the Clinton machine during the Russia hoax. Remember that? Years of lies, smears, and witch hunts designed to cripple Trump's presidency before it even started. Turns out the so-called grassroots operations feeding that hoax weren't grassroots at all. They were fertilized with Soros cash. Can you believe that? The same man funding prosecutors who won't prosecute criminals was also fueling the biggest political fraud of the century. And it doesn't stop there. On August 13th, Senator John Cornyn opened a probe into Soros's shadowy role in boosting Beto O'Rourke's election machinery in Texas. Why would a billionaire financier from Europe pour money into a failing Texas campaign? Because destabilization is the goal. It's not about winning every race. It's about injecting chaos, draining conservative resources, and planting seeds of division. Then came September 3rd, when Peter Schweitzer, one of the most credible investigative voices in Washington, laid it out. Soros isn't just a donor, he's a racketeer, a man running a network that operates more like organized crime than charity, funding operatives, pulling strings in the media, infiltrating campaigns. It's RICO 101. Trump sees it. The GOP sees it. But here's the kicker. Soros isn't working alone anymore. His son Alex is stepping up, doubling down, and meeting with top Democrats like it's business as usual. The dynasty of disruption is alive and well. But what exactly is Alex Soros doing right now that should send a chill down every American spine? Alex Soros isn't some quiet heir sitting in the shadows. He's on the front lines, shaking hands with senators, dining with Biden allies, and plotting how to extend his father's empire for another generation. Just this summer, photos surfaced of Alex meeting with Democratic leadership on Capitol Hill. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. Why? Because he's not just carrying on the Soros legacy, he's expanding it. Think about the timing. As Trump calls for RICO charges, Alex is suddenly more visible than ever. He's cozying up to the same people pushing open borders, soft on crime policies, and censorship masquerading as safety. And while Americans struggle with inflation and violence in their neighborhoods, Alex is flying private, building influence networks, and preparing to steer billions into the 2026 and 2028 election cycles. Meanwhile, Soros-backed groups aren't just playing politics, they're infiltrating culture itself. On June 7th, Fox exposed how Indivisible, funded heavily by Soros cash, wasn't just meddling in House races. They were behind orchestrated Tesla protests, targeting Elon Musk for daring to push free speech on X. Can you see the pattern? Every patriot who speaks out, Trump, Musk, Kirk, becomes a target, and the money trail keeps leading back to the same family. But here's where it gets darker. Remember February 25? The FCC confirmed briefings on Soros's financial web tied to the Odyssey radio buyout. That's not just politics, that's media control. Local conservative voices wiped out by stations suddenly turning left overnight. It's information warfare, plain and simple. So the question is, how far does this reach really go? What other pillars of American life are being quietly hollowed out by Soros's billions? When Trump said Soros should be charged under RICO, he wasn't exaggerating. He was laying out the only legal framework that fits. Think about it. This isn't some scattered collection of donations. It's a coordinated enterprise, a network that manipulates elections, funds chaos in the streets, and buys influence in the media. If a mob boss funneled money to corrupt judges and controlled entire neighborhoods, the DOJ wouldn't hesitate to call it racketeering. So why is Soros treated differently? Let's look at the evidence. Progressive DAs bankrolled by Soros's foundations refuse to prosecute violent criminals. Cities like San Francisco, Chicago, and Philadelphia have turned into laboratories for lawlessness. Smash and grabs are ignored. Repeat offenders are back on the street before the ink on their arrest papers is dry. Ordinary Americans suffer while Soros-funded operatives pat themselves on the back for justice reform. That's not justice. That's sabotage. And it gets worse. Remember the violent protests that spiraled out of control? Looting, burning, attacks on police? Follow the money. Over and over again, it leads back to Soros's funding pipelines. These weren't organic uprisings. They were organized disruptions meant to destabilize conservative leadership, scare communities, and weaken faith in law enforcement. Trump's August 27 Fox interview hit the nail on the head. Soros and his son are financing lunatics ripping apart America. Strong words, but they match the facts. When you see a billionaire financing riots, hoaxes, and prosecutors who protect criminals instead of citizens, how else can you describe it? But here's where the story turns. Republicans aren't just exposing Soros's game. They're preparing counterstrikes, real investigations, real consequences. And one move just weeks ago signaled that the tide might finally be shifting. The tide turned when Congressman Chip Roy demanded a select committee to investigate left-wing violence in America. And he wasn't speaking in vague terms. He named it for what it is: organized political terrorism, emboldened and financed by Soros-backed networks. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, that demand hit with the force of a sledgehammer. No more treating attacks on conservatives as random acts. No more excuses. This is about connecting the dots and holding the money men accountable. Trump amplified it, praising Roy and promising that under his leadership, Congress and the DOJ won't be allowed to look the other way. He knows the American people are watching. They're angry. They've seen patriots like Kirk targeted simply for standing up against radical indoctrination. They've seen ordinary citizens harassed at school boards, doxxed online, and bankrupted by lawfare, all while Democrats shrug. And while Trump pushes accountability, he's also unifying the movement. His decision to honor Kirk with the Medal of Freedom wasn't just symbolic, it was strategic. It told every activist, every parent, every young conservative that their sacrifice won't be forgotten, that the Republican Party will protect its people. Contrast that with the left, which glorifies chaos and excuses violence. The difference couldn't be clearer. But here's the real stunner. Even as Republicans lay the groundwork for investigations, evidence keeps piling up showing Soros's influence in areas most Americans never even think about. Areas where the manipulation is subtle but devastating. You want subtle? Let's talk about Soros's grip on media. February 25th exposed it when the FCC confirmed that Soros-linked financiers were tangled up in the Odyssey radio buyout. That wasn't just a business deal. It was a stealth operation to seize control of local talk radio. Stations that once carried conservative voices, especially in swing states, suddenly tilted left. Ordinary listeners had no idea why their morning host was gone or why their favorite station stopped taking calls about border security. But behind the curtain, the Soros network was pulling levers. And it's not just radio. Soros-backed journalism projects funnel millions into so-called nonprofit outlets. These outfits push progressive narratives, smear conservatives, and drown out dissent, all while claiming to be independent. It's manipulation disguised as news. Can you imagine the outrage if a conservative billionaire secretly bought up media platforms to silence liberals? Yet Soros does it openly, and the press yawns. Then layer in his activist network. Groups like Indivisible, revealed by Fox on June 7th, don't just meddle in elections, they infiltrate culture. Remember the Tesla protests? Soros' cash was right there, funding mobs attacking Elon Musk for daring to challenge censorship. It's a pattern. Choke off conservative media, harass business leaders who won't bow to the left, and keep Americans distracted while elections are quietly rigged in the background. The reach is staggering, and it raises the question, if Soros can shape courts, elections, prosecutors, and media, what can't he shape? And what's the next battleground Republicans are preparing to expose? The next battleground is elections themselves. On August 13th, Senator Cornyn's probe into Soros' involvement with Beto O'Rourke peeled back the mask. The money wasn't about helping Beto win. It was about flooding Texas with outside influence, draining GOP resources, and creating chaos. Classic destabilization. That's how Soros plays the game. He doesn't need every pawn to win. He just needs the board tilted in his favor. And now his son Alex is carrying the torch. Reports show Alex constantly meeting with Biden allies, House Democrats, and even White House staffers. This isn't casual networking. This is the handoff. George Soros may be aging, but Alex is younger, hungrier, and just as ruthless. He's making sure the billions keep flowing into DAs, activist groups, and nonprofits that manipulate narratives and smear conservatives. Republicans know it. That's why Chip Roy's push for a select committee is gaining steam. That's why Trump keeps hammering the RICO angle. And that's why Peter Schweizer's September 3rd piece matters so much. When a respected investigator calls Soros a racketeer, it shifts the debate from politics as usual to criminal conspiracy. But here's the most chilling detail. These operations aren't just aimed at Washington or Texas. They're targeting local communities, school boards, and even church networks. The goal? To hollow out conservative resistance from the ground up. So the question is, what happens when ordinary Americans finally realize this isn't random politics? It's a coordinated war on their values, their neighborhoods, and their children. Ordinary Americans are starting to see it. Parents at school boards, veterans in small towns, workers watching their neighborhoods crumble, they're realizing these aren't isolated problems. It's a coordinated attack on the foundations of American life. And the Soros network is at the heart of it. His billions bankroll DAs who refuse to prosecute predators, leaving families exposed. His activist groups flood school board meetings, pushing radical curricula while smearing parents as extremists. His media influence silences dissenting voices. Piece by piece, it's a war on culture, faith, and freedom. Trump understands this isn't just about him. It's about everyone who believes in America's core values. That's why his rhetoric has sharpened. He's calling it what it is, organized crime against the Republic. And he's not alone. J.D. Vance has stood firm, hosting Kirk's memorial, reminding the nation that courage comes with a cost. Chip Roy is demanding real investigations. Conservative governors are pushing back against Soros prosecutors, declaring enough is enough. Meanwhile, the left keeps pretending none of this exists. They act as if Soros is just a philanthropist. But can you call it philanthropy when billions flow into chaos, lawlessness, and intimidation? When parents bury their children while DAs let killers walk free? That's not charity. That's subversion. And the cracks in their narrative are widening. The more evidence comes out, the more even moderate Americans start asking, if Soros is so innocent, why does every trail of chaos lead back to him? So what happens next? What steps are Republicans taking to make sure this empire of influence finally faces accountability? Accountability is finally moving from talk to action. Trump isn't just calling for RICO charges as rhetoric. He's laying out a roadmap for the DOJ under his watch. He's vowed that if elected, investigations into Soros and his network won't be buried in bureaucracy. They'll be front and center. Think about that. The same DOJ that spent years chasing Russia hoaxes could soon be forced to confront the real conspiracy, the money trail fueling America's decline. Republicans in Congress are lining up too. Chip Roy's Select Committee push is gaining allies, and with every new revelation, the Durham Annex, the FCC's media probe, Schweizer's racketeering analysis, the case gets stronger. It's no longer fringe. It's mainstream within the GOP. And that matters because once Republicans hold the gavel, subpoenas can follow the money straight to Soros' foundations. But it's not only Washington. Red state governors are already challenging Soros prosecutors. Florida, Texas, and others have stripped power from rogue DAs who refuse to enforce the law. That's the model. Push back at every level, federal, state, and local, until the machine breaks. Trump's message is simple. America can't survive if billionaires bankroll lawlessness, and he's showing the country that Republicans are ready to use every tool, every law, every committee to fight back. The left calls it revenge. Patriots call it justice. The question now, will the next step be the moment Soros himself finally faces the legal consequences he's dodged for decades? This is where it all comes together. Trump has drawn the battle lines, and the fight isn't abstract anymore, it's personal. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, after years of hoaxes, riots, and media manipulation, the American right understands the stakes. This isn't about policy differences, it's about survival, of law, of order, of truth itself. And at the center of the storm is George Soros, the man who poured billions into dismantling the pillars of America while hiding behind the mask of philanthropy. But here's the turning point. Soros is no longer untouchable. Trump has called him out by name. He's demanded RICO charges. He's promised investigations that won't stop at surface-level scandals, but will dig into the entire family network, George, Alex, the open society machine, and every dollar funneled into chaos. Republicans like Chip Roy and J.D. Vance are already laying the groundwork, making it clear this isn't just campaign talk. It's action in motion, and it resonates with Americans because they see the results of Soros' empire every day. The DA who let a violent criminal walk free, the radio station that suddenly flipped its message, the protest that turned into a riot, the smear campaign that silenced a conservative voice, each one tied by a thread back to the same billionaire empire. So when Trump says Soros should be in jail, it isn't a slogan. It's the logical conclusion to decades of evidence. And for the first time, that outcome feels within reach. The left calls it fear-mongering. Patriots call it justice delayed, but not for much longer. Because Trump has made it clear, the era of silence is over. The war is on. And this time, the American people are wide awake.